I played scary games that summoned malevolent spirits from the screen. I never should have opened that door. My heart raced as the shadows danced in the flickering light of my room. Everything seemed normal just moments ago. I was huddled on my bed, controller in hand, the familiar hum of my console lulling me into a false sense of security. The soft glow of the screen illuminated my surroundings, a sanctuary of comfort. But then, the game loading screen morphed into something chilling, a sinister face appearing, twisted with malice. The air grew heavy. Cold crept up my spine. I glanced at the dark corners of my room, where whispers seemed to echo. The silence felt too loud, too expectant. My pulse quickened. The shadows shifted, and I convinced myself it was just the game, yet the feeling that I was being watched wrapped around me like a heavy shroud. Then, the noises began. A soft scratching, like fingernails on wood, slithered through the stillness. My eyes darted to the door, the old wood groaning as if something was trying to break free. Was it my imagination, or did the air smell of burning plastic? The walls felt closer, the darkness almost palpable, suffocating. Each beep and clang from the game merged with the ominous sounds enveloping me. Objects in my room seemed to move, a flicker of movement just at the edge of my vision. A book toppled over, a pen rolled off the desk. Sweat beaded on my forehead, and my breathing grew shallow. I wanted to turn off the game, to retreat into the safety of my retreating shadows. But I couldn't. I was drawn in, trapped in a web of fear and curiosity. Every moment stretched, became electric. Then, a loud crash echoed from behind me. I spun around, dread pooling in my stomach. My heart thundered. Was it just the old house settling, or something far worse? I could almost hear the whispers growing louder now, almost calling my name. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to scream, to flee, but I was paralyzed, caught between fear and the magnetic pull of the game. My screen flickered violently, a malevolent glow bathing the room in an unsettling light. In an instant, a chilling laughter erupted from the speakers, and I could almost feel a presence looming just outside my vision. I took a step back, my eyes wide with terror. That laughter was not part of the game, it was something real. Something hungry, and then, I heard a knock on the door. Soft at first, then harder, urgent. My breath hitched. The darkness swallowed me whole as I realized I wasn't alone. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The knocking continued, insistent and heavy, like the pounding of a heartbeat echoing in the void. I froze, my mind racing with thoughts that churned in a tempest of dread. With each degree of intensity, the sound twisted like a serpent coiling around my chest, squeezing tighter with every hollow thud. The ancient wood of the door splintered faintly, holding the promise of something dark and furious lurking just beyond it. My breath quickened, and the laughter from the game morphed into cruel whispers swirling around me. I blinked, and suddenly my room felt much smaller, the walls writhing as if alive, closing in with every desperate knock pressing against the door. I was losing sight of reality, the boundary between the screen and my flesh becoming a muddled line of fear. Summoning a flicker of courage, I forced myself to take a cautious step towards the door. The game whirred on, its static ringing in my ears almost melodious, contrasting sharply with the frantic ballet of dread within me. I pressed my palm against the splintered door, the grain rough under my skin, wondering if it might provide any barrier against what lay beyond. Then, with every ounce of strength I could muster, I flung the door open. The light from the hallway spilled into my room, illuminating a scene that clawed at the very core of my sanity. No one stood there. Just the cold, empty stretch of the corridor, battered with shadows as if they were alive. Yet, the fear in my chest told me I couldn't let down my guard. I stepped forward, my eyes adapting to the dimness, scanning for clues, for answers, or any sign that could explain the malevolence that gripped my home. That's when I noticed the floorboards groaning beneath my feet, almost as if the house itself mourned my intrusion. Pulses of darkness rippled across the cracked walls, and then I saw a flicker of movement by the staircase. My heart plummeted, but I didn't retreat. A silhouette coalesced in the dim light, slim and elongated, just out of focus enough to turn logic against me. It stood at the far end, just where the staircase opened up to a cramped landing, shrouded in shadows, and just like that, a new sound emerged, slow and deliberate, the creaking of hands trailing across the banister. I squinted into the void, willing my eyes to adjust, when a voice, soft and sinister, curled around my ears, echoing the laughter from my console yet distorted into an unfathomable cadence. "Come play with USA." Chill suffocated any thought of retreat as the words vibrated through the air. I stumbled backward, saltwater pooling in my eyes from sheer horror. The faint glow of my screen flickered through the door, casting grotesque shadows on my walls, whispering with eager anticipation that and the next instant, from the corner of my eye, I saw a hand break the threshold of the darkness. It was long, spindly, and grotesquely pale, fingers stretching out towards me with an unnatural grace. I turned to the screen, but the game had turned into a nightmarish loop, the characters on the pixelated landscape writhing, mouths agape with silent screams, as if to warn me of a reality that had warped beyond my comprehension. The unseen presence was no longer lurking in the shadows, it was inching closer, beckoning me to embrace the darkness. My airways constricted, panic spilling from my throat in a hollow gasp. The voice rose again, echoing my name in soft cadences that twisted like ivy around my consciousness. "Come play with a force I'd never felt before." I bolted toward the door, but as I reached for the handle, it twisted shut with a resounding snap, locking me in the suffocating embrace of my own fears. The room transformed, walls contorting, the air crackling with a feral energy, consuming every semblance of safety. Light flickered violently, casting a myriad of shadows. The hand was now fully through the door, writhing and expanding, fingers curling like spiders ready to ensnare. Then my game glitch adjusted for a moment, but in that moment, every character's face shifted to mine, the game's pixels sharpening into the contours of my flesh. They screamed again, and I could feel their anguish in my bones, a collective warning woven into their tortured faces. Before I could process it, the hand lunged forward, grasping at my ankle, its grip icy as death. A frigid pulse surged through my body, invading my thoughts, pulling me toward the darkness that bled behind the screen. My surroundings melted into chaos, the vibrations of the game merging with a singular, horrifying realization. Not only had I opened the door, but I was being dragged toward a fate bound by the spirits I had awakened. As I fought back, desperate to escape, I felt the energy shift again. The laughter grew louder, escalating into a wild crescendo that threatened to drown me in an ocean of despair. Just before everything swallowed me whole, right before my vision faded into the ravenous darkness, I caught one last glimpse of the screen, the game now simply displaying one word in blood-red letters: join. The echo of my own scream melded with the cacophony, and suddenly, all went black. When my consciousness flickered back to life, I was not in my room. Gone were the familiar horrors of my life, replaced by an infinite expanse of shadow and despair. I could feel something moist beneath me, a writhing mass that was both solid and liquid, slimy and pulsing, as if the ground had morphed into a living nightmare. I instinctively recoiled, but the surface seemed to hold me captive, its chill seeping into my skin. The game had changed, transformed from the flickering pixels of my console into a grotesque theater of torment. Wisps of ethereal light danced in the dark, their flickering patterns akin to mocking laughter swirling around me. They taunted me, reminiscent of the previous laughter that had gripped me before the door had closed. "Welcome back to the realm of the Forsaken," a voice intoned from the shadows, each word dripping like venom, reverberating through the hollow void. Panic surged within me as I realized the voice belonged to the silhouette I had glimpsed by the staircase. "Its hunger is insatiable, just as you are curious," it whispered, the darkness coiling around its form like a sentient cloak. The dim light illuminated vague features, elongated limbs and hollowed eyes that gleamed with malevolent intent. They shimmered like glass in the depths of forgotten horrors. "You chose to pass through the door. You chose to play, it continued, each word draping slivers of dread over me. I wanted to speak, to cry out, but my voice was swallowed by the swirling abyss. Do you think you can escape? The figure seemed to chuckle, and in that moment, I felt a thin tendril of spirit wrap around my wrist, clinging with a strength that defied the laws of reality. With a force that took hold of my very soul, it pulled me deeper into the void, a disorienting sense of vertigo twisting my mind that I was propelled forward through the darkness, and the landscape warped into a nightmarish fusion of pixelated scenery and macabre nightmares, the forest from the game's level mixed with tortured remnants of my own home. Walls twisted like shadows, echoing faint cries, as though every sound reeked of unending torment. Shapes darted just beyond my vision, phantoms that whispered secrets meant for ears far less fragile than mine. As I stumbled through the grotesque amusement, I caught sight of a figure, a phantom from my own life, standing still among the chaos. My heart plunged at the familiar visage, a friend, their face twisted in agony, eyes wide as they attempted to scream but were bound to silence. I reached out, desperation clawing at my throat. Help me! I called, but my voice echoed emptily, merging with the mocking laughter that filled the void. Your friends belong to this realm now, the silhouette interjected, its fingers twitching with glee. Anyone who dares to play cannot escape, they are absorbed into the game, forever taunted by their own choices. The dark energy around it crackled, and I knew then that the specters were right. This was a prison, an eternal loop of torment that I turned to run but found myself surrounded by achingly familiar figures, lost souls who had once been smiling friends, their faces now torn by the sinister realities that shadowed this dimension. They swayed like marionettes, entranced by the darkness, their hollow eyes glistened with pain. Each step I took reverberated through the void, the lingering essence of their presence suffocating me. Join us, they sang, their voices harmonizing into a deadly lullaby. It resonated within, the words weaving through my thoughts, and I felt a horrible compulsion swell inside me, a yearning to surrender to the shadows. I fought it, summoning fragments of my memories, the laughter at my house, the moments we shared before despair devoured everything. But the darkness meant to consume me was insistent, hungry for my resolution. A jolt of despair shot through my spine as I realized I had to escape the lure of their familiar faces. Summoning energy I didn't know I had, I plunged deeper into the maze of chaos, clawing for fragments of light amidst the swirling darkness. Then, periphery. Doubts coated my senses again. What if there was no escape? Just as that thought ensnared my heart, I noticed, in the distance, a glowing pixelated portal, a flickering trap that might lead me back home or further into despair. As I advanced, the laughter changed, a cacophony of fury blending into a primal scream, as if the very fabric of this place was protesting my defiance. The figures lunged at me, reality swirling in a storm of anguish. Join us. Come play. Their voices merged with the rising tide of chaos, until every element dissolved into an overwhelming cacophony that promised to shatter my sanity. In that moment of desperation, a figure appeared by the portal, pale fingers stretched towards me. Something unnaturally beautiful was lurking beneath the surface as their eyes shimmered with a keen clarity. I was left with a single, paralyzing choice, to leap towards this echo of myself or succumb to the terrible abyss that had ensnared my friends. The choice chased me like a ravenous beast, and as I took a final breath in the chaos of distorted laughter, I leaped. The moment I leaped, time fragmented into a chaotic mosaic, a dissonant blend of colors dancing around me. I tumbled through the portal, a wild rush of pixels and shadows that ripped at my core. The confines of the dark realm faded, replaced abruptly by a blinding light. As I staggered backward onto solid ground, I caught the faint echo of the voices fading behind me, a siren call dripping with malice, but I hadn't escaped, I had only transitioned into another layer of horror. I found myself standing in the heart of my once familiar suburban neighborhood. It was my street, but drastically altered. Each house loomed larger, shrouded in thick fog that swirled like smoke, wrapping around the streetlights which flickered extravagantly, illuminating chilling silhouettes before extinguishing completely. An unsettling silence wrapped around me, deep and suffocating. The sounds of laughter and life, so vibrant only moments ago, were replaced by an unnatural stillness. Everything felt distorted, as if the space around me had been ripped from the seams of reality and patched back together with fear and dread. My heartbeat consumed my ears, amplifying the tension suffusing the air. "Help me," the whispered plea floated past me, a soft sigh threaded through the chill. My instincts screamed to run, but the voice was achingly familiar. Turning, I saw a figure blurred by the fog, encased in shadow. The unsettling familiarity tugged at my mind, drawing me closer. "Is it really you?" I faltered, my voice trembling as I stepped forward. Each step felt like a descent into an abyss of dread. As I got closer, the hitch in my breath speared through me. There stood Tim, my closest friend, but something was horrifyingly wrong. His laughter that once filled our shared moments now lay buried beneath layers of sorrow, twisted in anguish. "They took me, just as they took you," he said slowly, his eyes vacant yet urging me to remember. "We didn't heed the warnings. We thought it was just a game. Tim, we have to get out of here. How do we escape?" Dread slithered into my heart while I grasped at any semblance of hope. His hollow gaze drifted to the horizon, where the skyline seemed to ripple like water. "There is no escape." He seemed to be communicating with the fog itself, as if something loomed just beyond our view. "They are watching. They are always watching." I felt the shadows respond to his words, coiling tighter around us, the whispers from the void taking form once more. "Join us," they hissed, their voices intertwining with a grotesque melody, an invitation cloaked in despair. The fog swirled closer, dimming my vision and muddling my thoughts. Tim's eyes widened as he staggered back. "You mustn't. Don't let them, don't listen," he cried, but already the whispers wrapped around me. My head spun as the warmth of our camaraderie began to twist into a haunting nostalgia, and within the depths of me, an insatiable yearning emerged, a longing to be enveloped by the darkness that promised release from my fear. No. I shouted, clenching my fists, tears mingling with absolute terror. I gripped the edges of reality, clawing for the sharp edges of my memories, the campfire stories, late-night video game marathons, the sound of laughter splintering the dark. But those memories slipped through my fingers like sand. "Come to us." The echoing voices called, their tones wrapping tighter than chains. With each syllable, they dug deeper into my soul, weaving despair into the fibers of my being. I felt myself buckling, a part of me desperately wanting to submit to the claims of the abyss. "Don't let them win." Tim's pleas rooted me, anchoring me back to the shards of light I fought against the suffocation of. The fog thinned for just a moment, and I caught a glimpse of my streetenly. It was now laced with jagged edges, the comforting homes replaced with spectral nightmares. The houses shifted and writhed, the very essence of their structure rippling as if alive. Then, out of the mist, a figure emerged. An immense dark silhouette with tendrils stretching from its back, reaching toward me. Its presence pulsed with an energy that stole the breath from my lungs. It wore what seemed to be a faceless mask, but I could feel its insatiable hunger, a consuming void that made the very air tremble. "Join your friend," it whispered, its voice like thunder, swirling with the promise of solace. "Surrender to the game," Tim screamed, but it sounded distant, muffled as the shadows coiled around me, whispering sweet promises of ease, of eternal play. I felt dizzy, fragmented. "No!" I roared, forcing my will against the tide, my thoughts clashing with the encroaching darkness. "I want." But as I struggled, I felt the tendrils wrap tighter around my wrists, pulling me closer to that indistinct horror. The beings of sorrow and shadow shifted, faces flashing before my eyes, each one a haunting blend of familiarity and infinite sorrow. I suddenly understood they were the ones who had lost their fight. With all my strength, I drew forth one last memory, Tim and me, laughing manically during a gaming all-nighter, our banter cutting through the discomfort. Fueled by that nostalgia, I began to shout, "I want join you." Tim's eyes locked onto mine with desperation, and I saw the light of his spirit beginning to dim as he was slowly consumed by the shadow. "Don't forget me," he cried, before his voice merged into the cacophony of chthonic shouts that filled the air. The darkness wrapped itself around me, dragging me down as I felt the chasm of despair widen, echoing with power. I was on the brink of being swallowed when I caught a glimmer of the pixelated portal Aga, and it flickered with an alluring subtlety, dangling the promise of escape. With a primal scream, I lunged toward it, but in that instant, the shadowy presence lunged for me as well, its maw wide, pulsating with ravenous hunger. Time slowed, clarity drowned in chaos, and I had one fleeting thought before the world exploded into a void: would I vanish into the game, trapped forever, or could I snatch the remnants of light one last time? And then darkness. The darkness enveloped me like a thick, suffocating fog, snuffing out every trace of light. It was a vast abyss, an infinite void that pressed in from all sides, whispering promises of unending rest, while my mind fought against the creeping despair. I felt weightless, suspended in a state between existence and oblivion. But then, reality slapped back. My body lurched. I was tumbling, falling through the depths of the dark. Just as I thought I would lose my grip on sanity, the world reassembled beneath my feet in an agonizing jolt. I crashed onto a cold, hard surface and gasped, struggling to regain my bearings. Opening my eyes, I found myself sprawled on what appeared to be a worn wooden floor, scattered with dust and remnants of scattered paper. My breath quickened as I took in my surroundings. Walls, gray and peeling, closed in around me, adorned with faded posters that looked like they had been torn from the pages of an old horror magazine. Each was depicting ghastly figures, eyes hollow and mouths agape in silent screams, and then, a flicker. The lights buzzed violently before stabilizing, casting a pale, sickly glow. I pushed myself up, icy fear weaving through my veins. The room, where the hell was I? Glimmers of video game consoles and relics from my childhood dotted the edges of the space, but they were decaying, the wires corroded, the screens cracked. My heartbeat rattled at the familiarity. It was a graveyard of childhood innocence twisted and perverted into a nightmarish landscape. Hello. I called out, my voice tremulous against the void of silence, only to have it bounce back mocking me. Anxiety washed over me as I turned slowly, my instincts heightened, searching desperately for any sign of life. Ahead, a dim doorway led into darkness, but off to one side, an old television flickered to life on its own. The static buzzed before cutting to a screen, the colors bleeding together into a grotesque montage of warped games. A familiar song echoed through the air, twisted and distorted, a remix of lullabies we once sang during sleepovers. To play or not to play, a distorted, childlike voice crooned, each word dripping with malice. It was the same voice I had heard whispering back in the fog. Suddenly, shadowy figures began to dance at the edges of the screen, features obscured, but their intentions unmistakable. That I stumbled back, feet taking me toward the door, when a sudden sharp cry pierced the air. My heart stopped. It was a voice I recognized too well. Help me. The cry was mixed with guttural sobs that echoed in the recesses of my mind. Tim. I screamed, fear and panic igniting within me, propelling me forward. My hands grasped the doorknob as I burst through. The stench of decay and dampness assaulted me instantly. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I found myself standing in a narrow hall lined with grotesque paintings that seemed to bleed color. Flickering overhead lights cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, contorting and shifting, alive and malicious. Where are you? I shouted, desperation steeping my voice as I moved deeper into the corridor. Every step taken felt like a step into peril, thin walls closing in, but I needed to find Tim. I couldn't bear the thought of losing him to this nightmare. Suddenly, I heard a soft thud of footsteps behind me. I whipped around, terror gripping me as I saw a flicker of movement. There, standing at the far end of the hall, was a figure cloaked in darkness, its face hidden beneath a hood. You shouldn't have come here, it croaked, voice slithering with wicked amusement. Let him go. I yelled, raising my hands futilely as if to ward off the encroaching dread. My heart raced as it began to inch closer, and I spotted something beneath its tattered hem, crawling and twitching, a swarm of grotesque, malformed hands. The figure chuckled, low and haunting. He's right where he belongs, playing the ultimate game. Tim. I screamed, adrenaline flooding my veins. I pushed past the enveloping terror, running toward the figure, but it vanished into the shadows, laughing cruelly as the walls seemed to pulse with its sinister glee. Panic surged within me. No. Come back. I ran further into the blackness, desperation giving my limbs strength. I could feel the weight of the shadows trying to pull me away, wrapping around my ankles, drawing me toward a door at the end of the hall that I slammed my shoulder against it and burst through, gasping as I found myself in a vast room filled with screens showcasing nightmarish game levels. Each one showed scenes of torment and twisted reality, but my eyes locked onto the one that blared with color me memories played out in pulses and flashes. Tim's face twisted in fear and pain. "Help me," he wailed, immobilized within the screen. A digital prison.no. I shouted, and in that moment, I felt the presence behind me, the cloaked figure materializing once more. "You cannot save him," it hissed coldly, extending a skeletal hand towards the screens. "Join us instead." As I turned back, the room distorted, colors shifting into harsh grays and blacks, the floor trembling beneath me. The screens flickered wildly, and for a moment, I saw Thema, facet of my childhood friends, their eyes wide with terror as they reached through the pixels, lost souls begging for release. My thoughts fractured. How many had fallen before me? The laughter, the camaraderie, all twisted into these screams, drowning under the weight of memories turned nightmares. Desperation clawed at my chest. Either I could leap forward into that light, risking everything for Tim, or succumb to the darkness that promised to free me from the pain. As I took a step toward the screens, the shadows converged around me, an army of whispers demanding my surrender. But before I could decide, I heard a deafening crash and a scream tore through the room, a shriek I recognized over all others. "Don't let them take me." With that, a sudden surge of determination flared within me. I lunged toward the screen, ready to shatter the confines of this nightmare, but as I did, the lights exploded, plunging me into complete darkness, and then the freezing grip of something cold, all-consuming, felt like icy fingers closing around my throat. "Welcome to the game," it echoed as I fell into an abyss, and my scream was lost forever. The void opened around me, a massive chasm of nothingness that engulfed my senses. I felt the coldness seep into my bones, petrifying me in its eerie embrace. My own gasp reverberated like a broken echo as panic clawed at my throat. The crushing silence that followed felt like a predatory breath hovering above, waiting. Then, whispering, emerged the same faint voices from before, spiraling with desperation and pleading. "Help us, save us." Their tones twisted, ricocheting through the emptiness, each syllable heavy with unresolved agony. Instinctively, I clawed at the darkness surrounding me, searching for any solid surface. Fingers grazed against something rough, the old wooden floor returned beneath me, grounding me in this nightmare. But as I blinked against the oppressive dark, once again, I found myself in a grotesque echo of reality. That I was sprawled on the familiar floor of the room, every shadow around me seeming to pulse in time with my heart. The screens twinkled menacingly, flickering static that warped and twisted into the faces of long-lost friends, faces twisted in fear, begging for release. I could feel their eyes boring into me, judging me, accusing me of their demise. "Tim!" I shouted, scrambling up unsteadily, but my cry seemed swallowed whole in the vastness. "Where are you?" No answer. Instead, I heard the soft hum of the old television across the room. I pivoted towards it, drawing an invisible thread between our terrors. The screen sputtered to life, a cacophony of color spilling forth. The gameplay depicted was horrifying horrors from a twisted dream, the very worlds we cherished corrupted into warped layers of existence. I watched in horror as ghostly silhouettes moved within the game, their figures contorting grotesquely as they maneuvered through ghastly landscapes, eyes vast and hollow, filled with a desolate yearning. "Join us," they pleaded in unison, their voices overlapping, moving rhythmically, layers of suffering interwoven. Suddenly, through the muted colors of the screen, a new figure emerged. Tim, trapped in a warped battle against an unseen enemy, thrashing and shouting, a digital prison of pixels and nightmares. My heart shattered anew, and the fire within me ignited, pushing me forward. "Tim!" But a film of shadows stretched along the threshold of the screen, latching onto me like a dark embrace, each touch sharper and more invasive than before, as if reaching for my very soul. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice rasped, echoing above the cacophony. A familiar voice twisted into a bitter mockery. The cloaked figure appeared before me, emerging from the dark recesses, its grin a sinister crescent of malevolence. "You're too late, he's already playing with the others," enjoying their pain. The sight of it sent shards of ice racing down my spine, rendering my feet immobile. Desperation flooded my veins, and I pushed against the shadows wrapping around me. "Stop! Let him go!" I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of fear. With each syllable, the shadows writhed and pulsed around me, angry tendrils seeking to pull me down, deeper into their grasp. The walls trembled, shaking like disturbed graves. I could feel the energy, pulsating all around like the heartbeat of something ancient and terrible. "Please," I begged, "I won't let you take him." The figure merely laughed, a sound that slithered through the air like oily smoke, filling the space with despair. "You cannot stop the game, it has already begun. All that remains is for you to play your part or join the rest of them." Suddenly, the screens buzzed louder, the visions intensifying, breaking into chaotic flashes of bright colors and hideous landscapes. Tim's face appeared again, anguish etched deep in his features. "Help me. It's trying to take me." His voice broke through the static like shattering glass, sharp and clear, anchoring me. Panic surged in my chest, propelling me toward the television. The oppressive weight of the shadows fought against me, their grasp flexing tighter as an icy exhilaration shot through me. Taking a leap of faith, I reached for the screen, desperate to pull Tim from this digital abyss, feeling an otherworldly force attempting to pull me backwards. And then a terrifying roar resonated through the room, a scream that shattered the glass-like barrier of the screen, splitting reality. At that moment, the shadows lashed out, creeping toward me with renewed fury, and I felt a grip cold, clammy fingers clutching at my ankles, beginning to drag me back into the darkness. No. I screamed as I grasped the edge of the screen, bracing against the weight of despair that threatened to swallow me whole. But just as I thought I was breaking through, a sudden jolt shook the very foundations of the room. The lights flickered violently, and the floor crumbled beneath me. With my fingers slipping and an agonizing scream erupting from my throat, everything around me imploded into a vortex of light and shadow, and the last thing I saw was the glimmer of Tim's terrified eyes before I was yanked into a deeper void, a world where echoes screamed eternally, losing the battle against the unforgiving blackness. "Let the game begin." The haunting voice echoed as my vision faded, plunging me into a darkness where time ceased to exist, uncertainty closing in like a vice, and then silence engulfed me. As the oppressive silence enveloped me, an icy grip held me bound, different from the shadows I had just battled against. This new desolation hummed with a dreadful alive energy, fingers of dread curling into my mind. I hung suspended in nothingness, my thoughts the only flicker of light in that void. Gradually, a distant sound began to unfurl around me, a low thrum that vibrated like a heartbeat, punctuated by primal whispers that fluttered around my consciousness, filling the emptiness with their sorrow. They called my name, a soft yet insistent chant that twisted my very identity, a lullaby of anguish and warning. "Help us, please," they cried, a chorus of lost souls suffused with pain and loneliness. Suddenly, clarity pierced the obscurity, and I was jolted back into a warped version of reality, the room I once knew distorted beyond recognition. It was darker now, shadows splintered and contorted across the walls, each movement was deliberate, echoing with an intent both menacing and curious. The television remained, but its screen had flickered to reveal a different tableau. Gone were the frantic images of Tim, replaced by disjointed scenes, a carnival of horror showcasing unspeakable acts, laughter twisted into sinister mockery, fairgrounds collapsing into chaos, and grotesque figures loitering like hungry vultures, preying on fear. My own reflection shimmered in the static, and I recoiled as the visage morphed into something unrecognizable, a distorted version of myself, eyes hollow, mouth stretched into a wide grin that mocked my terror. Panic fluttered through my chest like a caged bird. Tim. The name escaped my lips, desperate and raw. I fumbled backward, trying to separate myself from the horrific visions, but every turn revealed something darker, a stark reminder of what lurked behind me, illuminating my dread. I caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of the screen. A figure cloaked in shadows observed me, its presence imposing and unyielding, a puppeteer of despair. My breath quickened as I realized it wasn't just a figure, it was dozens of them, scraping their hands against the glass-like surface, faces smeared with righteousness and sorrow, accusing and beckoning at once. "Join us," they rasped, their voices dissolving into a cacophony as the scene inside the screen expanded, devouring the reality surrounding me. distorting the very fabric of the room. The wooden floor now weaved with the hues of the carnival, phonetic laughter drenching my mind with terror, drowning me in a tide of ancient will and invitation to play their grotesque games. But just as I sank deeper into despair, a voice sliced through the phantasmal haze, sharp and crystalline. "Find the key." It was a whisper, insistent and insidious, drawing me back. The echoes surged with urgency. "Key," I echoed, looking around wildly as the oppressive shadows began to writhe, creeping toward me like hungry snakes. I focused on the remnants of the carnival scene still swirling around the room, visions of clowns with elongated grins, game booths that bore rotting prizes of decaying flesh, screams twisted into vying soundtracks. My eyes darted back to the television, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw Tim's face return. His expression conveyed raw terror and a glimmer of hope. "The key is in the game, find it." But the enveloping darkness became a tangible mass, pushing me down, wrapping around my limbs. My very essence felt stretched thin, caught between the layers of realities. I fought against it, clawing at the shadows, but each shredded grasp pulled deeper, teasing, tantalizing, beckoning me into the depths of their eternal despair. I stumbled toward the television, feeling the pulse of the carnival's chaos drawing me in, and lifted my trembling hands to reach for the black frame. The moment I touched it, a surge of energy raced through me, a frigid jolt of shock that coursed down my spine and brought an overwhelming flood of memories, guilt, and desperation. Images cascaded like a waterfall, laughter shared with Tim, whispers of secrets in the dark, a promise to always protect each other. I trembled, the weight of my failures rising like a tide within me. The shadows hissed, clawing at my resolve. "Help him!" The cries resounded through the room, growing desperate. I gasped, feeling the walls warping around me, my instincts snapping to alert. I had to play this game. I had to find the key to break the cycle of torment. "A life for a life," the crowd of shadows whispered hungrily, a chorus of anticipation crawling inside my mind. Gritting my teeth, I dove deeper into the television, gasping as the coldness enveloped me once more, this time not to destroy, but to awaken. Images exploded around me, an infinite expanse of damned landscapes and ferocious echoes. And then, from the chaos, a voice emerged, clear yet chilling, cutting through the noise. "You are not alone, but you may wish you were." Before I could process those chilling words, the screen ignited with static, unfurling the scenes of horror into something unfathomable, twisting and crawling toward me. I felt myself slipping further into the malevolence that awaited, where each heartbeat resonated with dread, and as I vanished into the depths, the last image before me was Tim's face, revulsed, pleading, gasping out the words I dreaded to hear. "Don't let it take you too." With that, everything exploded into darkness. I had stepped into the realm of the game, and the clutches of the horror were about to claim me. "Welcome, player." The spectral voice echoed through the void, and I felt the ice-cold grip tighten around my throat as I realized I was no longer just an observer. I was the hunted. The world coalesced back into focus, unveiling a distorted carnival ground that sagged under the weight of despair. The once vibrant colors now rotted into sickly hues of gray and sepia, and banners hung limply, stained with something dark and viscous that dripped steadily to the ground, a grim reminder of the souls lost within the maze of this hellish fair. A hollow laughter rolled through the air, an infinite echo that made my skin crawl. My heart raced as I stood in the midst of the grotesque scene, compelled to move forward despite every instinct screaming at me to run. There was a pulse here, a rhythm that interconnected the very fabric of this nefarious realm. The carnival throbbed like a living entity, feeding off fear and drawing strength from my very presence. "Find the key," the insistent voice urged again, echoing with a sense of dread that wrapped around my mind like the shadows before. A shiver coursed through me, a magnetic pull toward the heart of the carnival. I stumbled forward, my feet dragging across an uneven terrain of shifting sand, the ground moaning in protest as if each step sullied its already tainted existence. The air thickened with an unsettling inertia, malignant force that buzzed against my skin, as if I were being watched by unseen eyes. I glanced around, but the carnival seemed alive, the laughter whispering promises of pleasure warped into pitiful screams. In front of me stood the game booths, vibrant yet crumbling like ancient relics of fate. The sign above each booth cracked and swung in the damp air, its letters barely legible in the darkened haze. I felt compelled to investigate, each booth a promise of peril and perhaps a lead to the key. I approached the first booth, curiosity and a grim sense of foreboding intertwining as I peered inside. It was empty save for mirrors reflecting warped versions of myself. As I leaned closer, the images morphed into grotesque distortions, my face twisting into various expressions of anguish, rage, despair, and maddening laughter. "Play with us." Echoed from within the mirrors, laughter turned sinister as its sound reverberated within my skull, grating against the edges of my sanity. "No. I will not." I shouted, recoiling, but the voices only intensified, circling my mind like vultures. My thoughts screamed at me to move away, yet my feet felt cemented to the ground, an invisible thread binding me to the grotesque allure of the booth. Suddenly, a burst of cold wind slashed through the air, and the mirrors rippled ominously. An arm shot out from one of the reflections, bony and skeletal, with fingernails like jagged glass grasping at me, and just like that, I broke free from the thrall and stumbled backwards. Next! Boomed a fanfare from the booth next to me. A chalkboard smeared with crimson swirls proclaimed, "The ring toss of despair." A stout, grinning clown emerged from behind the booth, laughter spilling like acid from its grinning mouth. Its eyes were black voids, yet they seemed to glimmer with malicious glee. "Would you care to play a game, sweet child?" It cooed, its voice slithering through the air like a serpent. I eyed the grotesque rings displayed before me, each large enough to wrap around my neck. "Win a prize, and perhaps you'll find what you seek." "What prize?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The key, dear heart," it continued, glee twisting its features further into a demonic grimace. It offered an unsettling wave, inviting me closer. "The only key that unlocks your friend's fate and your own, of course." My heart thudded heavily in my chest. Tim's face was still fresh in my mind, the look of sheer terror, mingled with something more dreadful, a sadness that clawed at my insides. I needed this. I needed to play, but the question loomed like a specter: what would I lose in the process? I took a hesitant step forward, suppressing the rising notion that I might already be too far gone. The clown's grin widened impossibly, as if sensing my dread, and I could feel the anticipation radiating off it like heat from a furnace. "Let the games begin." It cackled, throwing its head back. Laughter booming through the air as the darkness congealed around us. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the first ring. Its surface felt slick and cold, devoid of physical warmth. I threw it, a wild hope igniting in my chest, but the ring spiraled off course, disappearing into the encroaching shadows, too far to follow. "Not a winning throw, dear player." The clown mocked, and the tingle of fear washed over me as I desperately scanned the surrounding games, the realization dawning that this carnival was not a game of chance, it was a game of sacrifice. Each failed attempt drew me closer to the abyss, and a sickening dread twisted my gut. I would lose something dear each time I failed, a reflection of my despair manifesting all around me, a weight I could feel pressing down with unbearable force. Despair swallowed me whole, and as I reached for another ring, the booth morphed, malforming into a twisted visage of Tim's face, screaming, pleading, reflecting a fear so profound it clawed at the edges of my heart that my hand froze. This was not just a game, it was a reckoning, a test of my very soul. I had to find the key before I lost everything me love, my sanity, myself. But before I could process the looming threat of my reality, a flicker of darkness swept through the carnival grounds, roiling like a storm beneath the ground, and the clown's laughter morphed into something guttural, echoing with the voices of souls long lost. Running toward the next booth, I sensed the carnival vibrating with rage, shadows undulating, as the distorted chorus grew into a crescendo of despair. "Play, or be played." A sudden panic filled my chest as I felt the ground tremble below me, and the carnival roared to life, its malevolence swarming over me, wrapping tighter, searching for a way to claim me. That I had become prey in a nightmare game, and with each choice, the stakes grew higher, whetting something dark and hungry in the shadows. Before I could scream, an ominous whisper slithered through the air, echoing that chilling promise once more: "You are not alone, but you may wish you were." Then, a feeling of suffocation overcame me as the earth shuddered, the ground splitting open beneath my feet, a swirling maw of darkness threatening to consume all hopes of escape. I screamed as I fell into the abyss, a plunge into the depths of terror, where laughing shadows awaited, ready to welcome me into their unending game. I landed with a bone-jarring thud on a damp, cold surface that felt alive beneath me. The echo of my scream faded into a chilling silence, only to be broken by the occasional drip of unseen moisture in the recesses of this dark pit. I instinctively shivered as fingers of ice-cold dread slithered down my spine, and my heart raced like a frightened bird trapped in a cage made of bones. Panic surged through me as I pushed myself upright, blinking into a murky darkness. I was surrounded by shadows, thick and oppressive, mirroring the carnival above but twisted, formed from the material of my own despair. The laughter was muted here, transformed from lively cackles into mournful wails that echoed endlessly in this chamber of echoes. With each breath, an overwhelming sense of wrongness permeated the air. My fingers traced the damp, rough walls around me, and I instinctively recoiled as I felt something slick, something warm and still alive. I pulled my hand away, my breath hitching as the nauseating stench of decay enveloped me. I was not alone. Welcome to the bottom, a voice tinged with sinister delight slithered through the darkness, wrapping around my limbs like a constricting serpent. From the gloom emerged slivers of light, disturbing reflections that danced teasingly on the walls, illuminating skeletal figures trapped in grotesque poses. They wore expressions of terror and pain, eternally caught in the throes of despair. Each figure was a reminder, shadows of those who had come before me. Their eyes followed my movements, hollow and accusing, pleading silently for salvation they'd never found. I swallowed hard, trying to quell the rising tide of panic. "Find the key," the voice said again, but this time there was a dripping malice that taunted the very essence of my hope. A chill raced through my veins as the wall beside me pulsated, revealing a thin seam that appeared to drool darkness. Lecherous tendrils slithered from the shadows, beckoning me closer with promises wrapped in seductive whispers. That I stepped back instinctively, but the ground shifted, pulling me closer to that wretched seam. It felt alive, hungry not just for me, but for an offering of despair. The walls shimmered and buckled around me, twisting with a need that confirmed my worst fears. This place thrived on suffering, and I was its next meal. Suddenly, another chilling sound erupted from deeper within the shadows, a low moan that climbed in pitch until it spiraled into a banshee wail. The tortured cries of those who came before resonated within the confines of my brain. Their anguish clawed at my sanity, and I pressed my hands over my ears to silence them. But doing so made it worse. The disembodied heads of former players emerged before me, their mouths moving in an endless chant of desperation, pleading for release, for forgiveness, for anything to quell the torment. One or perhaps many reached out towards me, fingers curling into bony claws. "Don't let it take you," they wailed, their eyes frantically darting around as if the shadows themselves were closing in for the kill. "Find the key. Break the cycle." I stumbled backwards, heart racing, trying to make sense of the madness. Was this hell? Had I truly been drawn into a dimension where my fears and regrets materialized? The very air was thick with malevolence, squeezing around me like a vice as I fought against it. "You," and the key echoed in haunting harmony, the voices merging into a mad cacophony that resonated within my bones. Something cold brushed against my shoulder, and I turned to find a shadow, larger, more imposing than the rest. "Did you think the carnival would let you go easily?" The voice slithered through the dark, smirking at my bewilderment. "You offer something precious, don't you? Something worth taking." Out of the shadows stepped a figure wrapped in a tattered cloak. Its face was obscured, but its hands stretched out, beckoning but not in invitation. The glint of sharp, jagged nails caught the faint light, and an abyss of darkness surrounded it, echoing a maw eager to devour. The figures around me began to chant faster, urgency propelling their pleas. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, only the primal urge to escape surged through my veins. "Find it!" they screamed, their voices an intoxicating blend of fear and desperation. "Offer what must be offered." With a sudden surge of energy, I ran, dodging the skeletal hands that reached for me, fueled by the fleeting thought of Tim, my captor and my savior. I blitzed toward the darkness that seemed to warp and twist secretively, determined to uncover the key they demanded of me before it was too late. Then, without warning, the walls shrieked in agony, the shadows convulsing in wrath. I glanced over my shoulder to see them twist and morph into something far more sinister. An exclamation of rage unleashed, the ground shook violently, sending me sprawling again as shadows contorted, becoming grotesque forms that chased behind me with laughter steeped in malice. Join us, join us. They howled just as I reached an arching doorway, barely held together by the weight of despair hewn from the very fabric of dread. With desperation burning through me, I plunged forward into the darkness beyond the archway, but the laughter crescendoed, and a bone-chilling realization washed over me. I was not running away from this nightmare, I was running deeper into its abyss. And just as I crossed the threshold, the ground trembled violently beneath me, throwing me to the floor as darkness enveloped me once more. A single thought pierced through the chaos: would I escape this time, or would I become yet another tortured soul, forever seeking the key? Then I heard Ida's soft voice breaking through the shadows, distinct yet distorted, whispering my name. Help me, and with that, I felt the world shift again as my heart stopped. The whisper was not Tim's. It was something more, something that filled the air with unholy dread as the shadows closed in around me. I could barely breathe as the darkness coiled around me, wrapping tighter. Regret flooded my veins, but I pushed forward, frantically searching for any semblance of salvation amid this swirling nightmare. The whispers continued to slither at my ears: find the key, break the cycle. Through the dense shadows, a flickering light caught my eye. My heart raced as I stumbled toward it, the chilling laughter ebbing at my back like an ill omen. The space opened up into a warped mirror maze, reflecting dozens of twisted versions of myself, eyes wide with terror, mouths twisted in eternal screams. Make a choice, a voice crackled, resonating from within the maze as if the walls themselves spoke. One path leads to salvation, the other to despair. Every step felt like wading through a thick tide of fear as I pressed onward. The path ahead forked into two, one illuminated with a soft glow and the other shrouded in an almost tangible blackness that whispered with longing, demanding my attention. I hesitated, the urge to choose the dark path coiling around my heart like icy fingers. Don't listen to them. Came a voice, cracking through the oppressive atmosphere as my gaze sought its source. It was Tim, or at least the glimmer of him etched in the flickering shadows, his face pale, marred by anguish. Find the key. Don't turn back. Panic surged within me, blurring my vision as I recalled every moment of laughter we shared, the whispered secrets during sleepovers, the relentless pranks, and the promises made in good faith. They were anchors within this chaotic storm. I needed to clear my mind, I had to focus. The key, I breathed, looking between the paths, my heart thundering in rhythm to the shadows vibrating around me. That I recalled the words, offered with both urgency and dread, reverberating in my mind: you offer something precious, don't you? But what was precious enough to break the curse? My friends? Yes, certainly, but how? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, invoking memories before everything turned to despair. Our lives, borrowing joy from one another, sharing the thrill of gaming nights, forming an unbreakable bond. Then it struck me: Tim. I shouted, beckoning him forth from the depths of the maze. What about the childhood necklace? The one we made together? A flicker of recognition crossed his face, twisted but real. You remember? Yes, it's linked to the essence of our bond. But it may cost you more than you're willing to give. No longer hesitating, I turned toward the path bathed in light. I'll do whatever it takes. I rushed forward, biting through the shadows, clawing at my heels, willing our bond to be powerful enough to break through. Embrace your sacrifice. The voice echoed ominously as the world around me twisted and contorted, the laughter erupting like a volatile storm. Faces emerged from every crevice, faces of my friends, silhouettes writhing in agony as they begged for release. Join us. They screamed, their tones like shards of glass piercing into my soul. That I won't. I roared, my voice resonating with fierce determination as I burst into the light. The walls closed in, shadows extending their grasp, fingers tangling like vines, but I could see a glowing object at the center of the chaos. The necklace. Its radiant light pulsed, calling to me. I reached forward, and the instant I grasped it, a surge of warmth flooded my brain. A fusion of memories meshed with potency. Suddenly, a cacophony of laughter erupted, reverberating not only from the realm that bound us but from the very strands of our essence. "What have you done?" The voice howled and raged, that I felt power the key surging through me as shadows recoiled, howling in fury. "You're nothing," I whispered, wrapping the necklace tightly around my hand, feeling brilliant energy flow into the air. "I'm taking back what you stole." With a fierce shout, I flung the necklace toward the twisted depths of the maze. The moment it flew from my hand, the world shattered like glass, and everything erupted into light. My vision was overcome with brilliant colors, and in that blinding flash, I felt an inexplicable rush, as though every shadow was violently pulled away, every tortured soul reborn into light. That I gasped as time seemed to accelerate, the realm collapsing around me until I was thrust through the edge of existence. But then I landed with a harsh gasp on the old, familiar carpet of my room. My heart raced as I blinked against the dim light, desperately aiming to process what had transpired. And then my mind shattered. A gamey reflection in the TV screen glimmered once more, but not just my own. Tim stood beside me, his blurry form solidifying against the backdrop of our now vacant childhood home. Laughter echoed through the air, the carnival chants morphed and hushed into a forlorn sigh. "Tim," I whispered, a sense of hope blooming in my chest as I turned to him. But his vacant stare pierced through me, and the chilling realization gripped my heart: he wasn't quite there, a shadow of the boy I loved. As he began to fade away, his voice merging with the noise, "You triumphed, but I am still in the game." The room started to dissolve alongside Tim, reality ebbing into ethereal shadows. My heart plummeted as I reached out to him, emptiness clawing at my insides, tears blurring my vision. "No, Tim. Don't let it take you too," he echoed, as his face vanished, drifting away like a remembered nightmare. The darkness seeped back into the room, coiling around me as the faint echoes of laughter rose, mocking my bittersweet triumph. Shadows flickered on the walls like old friends whispering secrets. What I believed to be an end was only a pause. That I in the corner of my thoughts, the whisper echoed, chilling and insistent, "You are not alone, but you may wish you were." And as I sat amidst the haunted silence, face dry from tears, a familiar flicker beckoned me, console flickering back to life, teasing me with its glow. The game paused with a single blood-red message, "Join US," and I understood then, with a shivering clarity. I was never meant to leave.